Hello, peeps. Welcome back to another episode of the Fly Shit and Scholarship Podcast. I am your host. It's Dr. Meesh, or also known as Dr. Tamisha Davis. I am here today with the lovely Dr. Jessica Marshall. One of my, connections that I saw her on Instagram. I was like, oh, she is cute. Dr. Marshall has a PhD in urban education from the Jackson State, and she is currently acting as the Assistant Director of Student Success at Norfolk State University. It's given HBCU girl up and through, and I love that. Hello, Dr. Marshall.
Hello, Dr. Davis. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am good. It's been a morning, child. It's been a morning.
Oh, let
Like,
me
I
tell you.
feel like, we are at these universities and sometimes we can't escape the bugs that go around. So my voice is scratchy, but we're working it out.
We pushing through. We pushing through.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll first start, I mean, this, some of like post-election and stuff. So how you doing in your world over there?
Well, let me tell you, being on an HBCU campus, we're disappointed.
Yeah.
Um, a lot has taken place, but as a community of African Americans, we have that resilience to always bounce back. But we must acknowledge that this was a pretty hard hit, hearing the election results and just trying to instill in students the mindset to keep going and like what kind of solutions can we bring to the table instead of joining the party of like, oh man, like look at what's going on, we're doomed, but more so having that mindset of like how can we fix things, what do we do, what could we do differently to have changed those results. So it's definitely
Yeah.
a bittersweet moment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting because I'm at a PWI, right? And during the election results, I was away in Mexico, thank God. But I was cranky. I was cranky. My husband had to check me because he's like, I get it. I know this is hard, but we are in Mexico and, look outside at the beach, do something because the attitude is not given. And so I
We
had the
were
opportunity.
rooting. We were rooting. This was going to be our moment. You know what I'm saying? There was so much hope for a better tomorrow through Kamala. And as a Black woman, and I know this resonates with you as well, is that we were just looking for a change, something different. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it just was like a hit in the gut. Like it took all week for me to regulate my attitude. So I'm right there with you, girl.
Me too, me too. I think I needed like Tuesday was a lot and I was at IQ, so International Conference for Urban Education, and I had a blast and that was hosted in Mexico. And so on I think it was Wednesday, the conference proceedings really hadn't started yet. And so I went to the beach and they had those cabanas at the beach and I was like I wanted a cabana. And so I was like asking the people like how much is it? And they were like, oh, it's $100. And normally I'm like really specific about where I spend my money and how I spend my money. And I
That
was
part.
like, you know what? F it. Like give me the $100 cabana, bro, because I need
Exactly.
a break.
We need, yeah, you needed that. That was self care coupled with trying to cope with the results. Like, yes, ball out.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell us, considering not necessarily considering the election, but I know that much of the population that we tend to forget about is like this protected environment of students, right? And so the election results come out, adults, we're at our jobs, so we're thinking about what we're doing at work, but there's this thick conversation that is also happening on campuses, on college campuses, US and US wide.
Right.
And when we look at the demographics of how people vote, right, and the demographics of people who are being highly college educated or highly educated, typically leaning blue, how in your first of all tell us more about your role, right, and then what did that look like for you in your role last week in thinking about student success and how this may have impacted students.
Sure. So again, I serve as the associate director of student success. So what that initially means is that I'm the caretaker for your students in terms of their academic abilities and success. So we provide tutoring. We provide in the form of embedded tutors that can look like in such lower level education classes. And it can also look like supplemental instruction where you have a tutor that's embedded in that course, follows along with the instructor, the professor, and then they hold their own study sessions. I also oversee mentorship, which is a big component to our student success model because it creates a way to have sense of belonging for that student, as well as our signature programs such as our Spark Summer Bridge program, which acclimates recent high school graduates into the college landscape through a 4 week intensive academic program. And then last but not least, I do first year and second year experience where that all comes together to really help that first year student navigate college, understand what's available, what the resources look like, and who to talk to. So um, I feel like I'm the central nervous system to the campus. Of course, once you make a connection with a student, a first year student who doesn't really know what to do, and they trust you, you locked in for life. So any minor inconvenience that happens to them throughout the day, throughout life, you are going to be their number one contact. So when they got the election results on the week before last, students were just like in a frantic. One thing I want to point out to you is that a lot of them were coming in saying that, hey, Dr. Marshall, I'm not going to be able to enroll in the spring. And I'm like, well, how come? Why do you feel like you're not able to enroll in the spring? Well, because with the, Donald Trump uh, becoming president once more, his initiative to eliminate the Department of Education. And I, did some reading, did some research, seeing what's in the, going on in the news and everything. And I do see the ads about it and the headlines. But I do want students to know that it just can't, it's something that just doesn't happen like this. It has to go through a process, of course, and it has to be voted on. So again, I want to highlight about students feel hearing these election results, hearing the agenda of Donald Trump, and what that means to their success in terms of them continuing their education. And as you know, serving on HBCU at an HBCU campus, we already are underserved. So thinking about him eliminating those resources, the Department of Education, how that funding helps supports so many students that go here from first gen to everything. It really is. I really am searching for the answers to kind of see where will we stand, like what will the direction be in this year to come. So
So with that, that's a big deal, right? And the craziest thing is just yesterday, I was teaching one of my classes and I teach a school social work class. And one of
yes.
my students asked that question, like, okay, now that we're here, what does cutting education and the Department of Ed look like, right? For some of our most vulnerable students, right? Like how does that impact them? How does that trickle down, or what does that trickle down effect look like? And it's an interesting kind of dynamic because when we have to have conversations about politics on university campuses, I find it difficult to do so being a black woman and teaching in a white space, right? And
Mm,
so with you, right, you are a black woman, you are a minority. So a lot of the trickle down effect or the conversation we're having about Department of Ed and all of the ways that the election results are going to impact us, those are things that like can also resonate with you, right? Do you find it difficult to have those type of conversations being a black woman, right? You are at an HBCU, but has this come up for you in the past?
right, right. I will say this: I feel safer having those conversations here. versus any other space on the planet, because you're surrounded by so many students that gravitate to have this opportunity to have this type of education because they want to be in spaces where people look like them, who have come from similar backgrounds, where they thrive, and they see that. So I feel very safe in having those conversations, more so even empowered. HBCUs, they answer the call. They've been the catalyst of change. So anytime they're at the forefront to be able to disseminate information and debunk any type of rumors. So if anything, it's a safe space for us to have those conversations. But it has not always been like that for me over my career. I've been in other spaces, like you mentioned, PWIs. I was in Texas. Okay, let's start there
Mm,
with Senate Bill House 8, with the elimination of DEI practices and DEI centers, where now you can't have those conversations. You can't put a particular emphasis or focus on a particular group, a marginalized group. So I am just so blessed and so happy to be able to be in a different space, because I could not imagine the conversation or how I would have to code switch or catch myself on a daily basis if I was still working in Texas. I could not. And at this time, post election results, I could not.
ye- yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy. So, a little more about that actually. Like, I would like to explore that more with you as the first season of this podcast is indeed focused on the aspect of like what code switching means for people who look like us who are in these spaces, right? And you said you were in Texas,
Yeah.
right? And now you're in Norfolk State. So
Now,
tell me more. Yeah, yeah. Like you climbing a little more up, a
yeah,
little more
yeah.
up.
Went from red to blue.
Tell me. Right, 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 right. But tell me more about that experience for you and code switching and what it has meant for you over the past couple of years.
Definitely. It has been hard because, in so many ways, a lot of people are fearful of the Black woman,
Mm,
especially when you are in a mid-level management type of position, or administrative position. So they already have this predetermined notion about us that we're aggressive, hard to work with. So, or if we change our hair, they have to comment on something, or just anything that you do or however you carry yourself, you're just always picked apart. So, just trying to remain neutral, still stand on business, still stand forth and be an educated individual, but also remembering that any little minor slip up, if your verbs are not agreeing, it could be used against you. And it's like, oh well, Black people don't know how to speak well, or whatever the case may be. But even in every culture, everyone has a slang or a way, or a specific dialect. So it's just being able to channel it in a way,
mm.
which is hard sometimes. That doesn't sound, but it's also the way of us being able to channel it, but also still be your authentic self. So it's a balance. It's a balance.
Uh, Why is that important? Why is it important for you, or has it been important for you, right? Because you can only speak for your experience, but why is it important to show up as your authentic self?
You never know who's looking. You never know who you're inspiring. So you have to be you. There's Everybody has a space in this earth, but you have to show up as yourself, because young ladies, young men who aspire to be successful, they look at you and they want to know, how did you get that success? How are you able to thrive and move forward? And if you're going about it being fake and phony, then that doesn't really help anyone. But if you're authentic and true in what you want to do and your intentions, it yields greater results. So just save everybody else all the heartache and time and just be true to you. So,
And, I love that you said that. Just, you never know who's watching. And I think for everybody, it's so nice to have people who you can resonate with, right? No matter where you come from or your background. But most importantly, when thinking about the work that we do, when thinking about the places in which we operate, how significant it is for someone, whether it's a person that we're teaching or whether it's a person for you that's coming in your office that's seeking support, how important it is for someone to just say, like, I can be myself, right? Because I look at Dr. Marshall and she is very much educated, she's very much smart, she's doing her job, but there's also a level of authenticity that she's bringing into this space, right? She's cool, she still is relatable, right? She's not using textbook words to speak to me, and the amount of safety that it creates. And I think that's the thing that consistently comes up when discussing how code switch is helpful, but in ways how it's detrimental because it can water down the safety and the community that we can build if we just are ourselves. A lot of the women that I've interacted with, or a lot of the educators I've interacted with thus far in this platform, I came in contact with them for just literally being myself and you guys being yourself and me being like, oh, this is a person who is educated, but also very fly, but also very much gives it like, and so
Yeah,
it's like, it's important for community. I can't stress it enough.
we wear many identities. Just because we're PhD holders does not mean that we're scholar button up to the collar type of individuals. We have style, we have, you know, we just present ourselves in so many different lights. So it's important to be able to let all of those beings, all of those characteristics show through, and not be that we're not that back then in the day where it was only just white males who could earn a terminal degree. Now we're making up the 3% of PhD holders. So
Mm-hmm.
we're looking different and we're coming in different shades. So I think it's really special for us to be able to be in that so others can see and say, gosh, if they can do it, I can definitely do it too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's extremely important. I think that that's extremely important. So you transitioned from, where were you before Norfolk?
So before Norfolk State, I was at Lee College, which is a community college right outside of Houston, located in Baytown. And Baytown is it's a chemical refinery type of city. So a lot of the curriculum is geared towards career tech, because that's what the opportunities are in the surrounding area. So and in
Got
that,
it.
so while being at Lee College, I worked as a shared college coordinator. So I worked basically with the local um, school districts in terms of like helping them with increasing their matriculation of students, what their plans were after high school. So
Mm.
I was contracted out to work on these campuses, work with the college and career counselors. And again, we're going back to that whole piece about access and equality. So that was the whole impetus of my role, is to make sure that students of color knew that they had support, that basically could take them and change the trajectory of their whole existence by offering them the tools that they need to be able to get through the college admissions process. Someone that can hold their hand all the way through and also work with their parents. College can be a very scary place. It's a lot of buildings, a lot of administrative processes that go with it. So, a lot of people, a lot of students feel like, man, I can't work through those types of things, and that presents a barrier, right? So having someone on campus, having that champion, that advocate for you to say, hey, let me break it down to you what this means. This is what the FAFSA is asking you to do. You know, just changing those terms out, making them into everyday terms really can be life changing for a student. So, and I understand that, we have a lot of work to do in terms of like breaking down our systemic barriers, because there are a lot of things that are in place with different policies and just the processes that we have in higher ed that kind of like are daunting and kind of make students feel like, okay, well, I read this, that means that I can't have access. But if we just really examine and look at ways to be able to, rearrange and change our verbiage and change how we communicate to students, I think more students would be inclined to want to go this journey and fulfill higher education.
Yeah, and I want to talk with you more about that because, we s- specifically in like black and brown communities and underserved populations, we always have this conversation about like college degrees, right? Now, I may sound super hypocritical when I say this, right? I'm not on the side of like everybody has to go to college, right? Let's
You're
start
right.
there
You're
because
right.
I feel like, there are there are trade schools, there are people who are crafty, who are in the
Yeah.
worlds of arts, who don't necessarily need to go to college, right? And so I think that how we teach the message of education needs to shift a little bit. But furthermore, for the ones who do have a desire to go to college, right? For the ones that we do push into the ivory tower, into these systems and these institutions, one of the things that we often forget is a lot of these people, a lot of these students that are coming from underserved backgrounds are coming from places where they don't have any help figuring out how to navigate this because some of them are first gen students, some of them may not be first gen students, but they're figuring out how to navigate college now in a different era than maybe their parents did, right? Because it's a different environment. And so we have these conversations and we're pushing people into these institutions, but we're pushing them into institutions without any substantial support. And if
Hmm.
I'm coming from a place where I'm encountering an experience, and when I go back home, there is no one that I can talk to about this experience that can help me navigate this experience. That becomes extremely daunting and difficult for me to survive in this very complicated world. And some of the things that come up, it's not just about like the financial aspects of it, even though that's a big part of it, but it's also about the social space and the responsibilities, right? Like a lot. I got to figure out the schedule. I got to figure out how I'm a steady.
Clothes, how to eat, where to eat. Listen, adulting fast
Yes,
track.
yes. And the beauty, and I always say, like, the beauty of college is that it is a protected environment for you to learn how to be an adult, right? In a way that is protected a little bit. But for those people and those students that are coming from underprivileged backgrounds, sometimes even in the protected space it can be really difficult for them, right? Like I've had
Yes,
so many conversations and I've seen so many kids go to school and it was great, right? Like, oh my goodness, you got accepted, you're on your way, you're doing the thing, and a year later they're back home,
exactly.
right? They're
Exactly.
back home. And we look at the numbers, and even at the college that I'm at, we looked at the numbers, and one of the demographics of people that we have a hard time maintaining, right, is
Mhm.
black males. Is
Absolutely.
black male students, right? They come, but they're not surviving the
Man,
4 years because the resources are not there. The familiarity is not there. The connection is not there, right? Like, where are they going to seek support from when there's really like very few people who look like them on campus, very few people who understand their struggles and their challenges on campus. Now, this may look very different at an HBCU, right? Which is why I think a lot of us are starting to have more conversations about the importance of HBCUs, especially in this climate. But I really enjoy hearing about the work that you're doing because essentially what's happening with you is you are catching students on the opposite end. We're pushing them in, right? High
Yeah,
schools, and we're pushing them in, but we're forgetting about them, and you're essentially trying to find ways that we can maintain them and maintain their sense of protection so that they can make it through the 4 years and survive the system.
absolutely. I think the biggest thing that we can do, and I'm speaking from a place where you don't have to hold a college degree to do this, is to help students, help our children, show them how it's the importance of seeking help and modeling those help seeking behaviors. Okay, because that's going to take you long. It's going to take you far in life. If you hit a brick wall and you just stay there and you never communicate with anyone about what's going on, you don't tell us that, hey, I've been running back and forth to care for a loved one. um, I'm working two jobs in order to support my family back home. If you don't tell us, then we won't know. But if you tell us, we have the resources, we have the answers. So then you're more, the more we're able to work with you and we build that trust, we're able to push you through and you can complete your degree. We can put those resources in place for you so you don't have to just suffer in silence. So I think that anybody can model healthy help seeking behaviors. So what that looks like is, say you have a high schooler and something breaks at home, you just don't let it stay broken in your home. You call a repair person, or you consult with someone for their expertise. That's modeling how to seek help. But if you do nothing, then how does your child know how that they can get help for something? Another point is, even with this election that happened, if you in the household as a parent have never voted, your child has never seen you or hear you say, "Hey, I'm going to the polls," or "Hey, I'm going to go vote," then how do you expect for a student to come here and form their own identity? They've never seen it. They've never witnessed anything like it. So, if anything, again, you don't have to have a graduate degree or have any college experience, but if you just know how to model what it looks like to seek help and be okay with asking for help, that can really help students go far. So I'm just a really big proponent on working with parents and families, because who knows your student better than them? If we can work together to ensure student success, that helps with the retention of keeping the student here, helping them to be able to persist, because now they see that they have two individuals. They have the institution that has their back, and they have their parents that have their back. Yes, parents may not be able to understand the rigor of college, but they can support you emotionally. And we're here to help you with all aspects. We can support you with emotionally, mentally, all those things. So we do understand. But it's just, my biggest thing is, I guess, is getting students to come in and trust you. How do you get
Hmm.
trust? And that's
Hmm.
always been a question for me, is like, how do you gain their trust? How do you reach students who are not coming to you, who don't gravitate, that are like in the shadows suffering on these campuses? So I'm always asking that question. How can I reach them?
Yeah, you just dropped a bag too, and I don't even know if you realize it. This the connection in between self-advocacy,
Yes.
seeking help, and how that has traditionally shown up in our communities, right? And this idea of like, if I'm a parent, if I'm a person, and I am not even modeling self advocacy by going out and voting, and I am not even modeling help seeking behaviors by having my voice heard. How is it possible that I'm able to pass that on to my child? And
Yes.
again, we're talking about these students who are coming from environments and they go to school, and you are right. One of the major things that we have issues, and when I say we, I'm talking about people of color, I'm talking about Black people. One of the major issues we have is seeking help. And
Yes.
and and it's not because we want to appear a certain way, right? It's really because we've come from such a history of being a history of people where we ask, we ask
Mhm.
and we don't get all the time.
Right.
But I think that the consistency and the louder and the louder and the louder you get, eventually somebody has to hear you, right? And that
Def-
may be years, that may be months, but I think teaching help seeking behaviors to our students is extremely important because they are little fish in big ponds at these universities.
Mhm. And you can definitely fall through the cracks. You can definitely get swallowed up if you don't know, like you said, if we don't teach our students, our children, how to advocate for themselves, how to speak up, how to have a voice, how to know how to bring your chair to the table is so important.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. They will get swallowed up, and a lot of times, I'm not going to just rag on the men, but they don't like to ask for help. They don't
Yeah.
ask for help. It's a pride thing, um, and but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't.
Yeah.
We have so many committed people that are just racking their brains, not sleeping at night, trying to figure out ways to better serve, looking at high impact practices to keep students engaged. Like we're and you too, we're constantly trying to evolve and find ways to reach our students and keep them here and let them know that they belong. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a lot of work. It's not an overnight project at all, but I'm in for the long haul. I want to see students succeed. I love getting those 2 3 year down the line messages saying, hey, that conversation that we had that time when I was getting ready to exit the program or drop out or leave, your words stuck with me. It helped me see things through. So I mean, I get my blessing from that. So, but also I just know that there is still a lot of work ahead of us in terms of really just educating and instilling in students the ability to speak for themselves in
Mm.
in an appropriate way. Don't wait until you haven't gone to class, you haven't submitted not one assignment, but you want to email the president. That's not how you advocate for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
Advocate for
you
yourself.
know, yeah, you got to be proactive. You got
Be
to be
proactive.
proactive.
You got to be able to come with what you've been doing versus what everybody else been doing to you. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
What
It's
is some of in your role currently at Norfolk, right? Like what is some of the things or a thing that you see has been working to, I mean, because you're at an HBCU, right? Your entire population is our minority students, right? In a sense, they're not a minority at Norfolk State, which is the beauty of HBCUs, right? It's the one time you get to spend your life in this protected bubble where you
yes.
are the majority, unless you live in PG County, right? but or Atlanta, right? But
Right.
outside of that, what is something that you feel like is most important outside of teaching them how to seek help? What are one of the things that you feel like you have been able to do as the Associate Director of Student Success to maintain some of the motivation and to maintain some of the students so that they can actually graduate?
Definitely. It's the ability to bring in individuals such as alums to the institution so those students can see that this model works, that receiving
Mm,
education from an HBCU works. I mean, it's a proven track history when we bring those individuals in and they say, "Hey, I was sitting in the same courses, I sat in the same seat, I was over in the same student center, and now look at me. I've been able to, be a business owner, or I sit as a deputy director for the National Transportation Board of Safety. Taking students to DC. It's just been amazing. So I feel like the opportunity of when you bring in people that look like our students and share their success stories really helps them stay motivated and connect
mm,
them. Mentorship is a huge piece. I think that I enjoy the ability to mentor here. And just even outside of higher ed, just being able to pour into young people is so key. It's such a blessing because someone took the time and took a chance on me, right?
Mm.
So I feel like it is my duty, it's my obligation to pour into others and to be able to let them know that, hey, you can achieve it. I want to put you in position to meet someone to help you get closer to your goal. Have you thought about shadowing? I know someone, and I think that's the beauty of also being at a HBCU. We're just so well connected.
Mm.
And the network is crazy because we just know so many different people in so many different spaces where we're like, hey, I need your help, or we can do that. So I really magnify the beauty of being able to be so connected and to bring in others that look like our students and show that success. So
That is genius, right? That is genius because on one, we, like I said, we cannot stress community and safety enough, but this idea that people need to see what works,
yeah,
right? I think a lot of the times we get caught up in the problem and we want to explore the problem and we want to stress the problem and we
yeah,
want to put all of the concepts of the problem on Front Street. But
yeah,
very rarely do we seek the success and the solution as an answer to the problem, right?
exactly.
So people make it out of college, even though they've had a difficult time and they've struggled, right? And so
Mhm.
using those individuals who have graduated from the model, who have beat the odds, and using them as representation on these campuses to motivate the student is important. So it's literally stressing how necessary it is for alumni to be connected back to their universities.
Very, very. It's so important. We need alumni. HBCUs are the only way we're going to survive is through our alumni base, also with the connection of networking, but also through the connection of giving as well. So
Mm,
it's very important that we couple those two together. But yes, students need to see that. They need to see that, it is worth it. These 4 years do go by fast. Make them worth your while. Connect, be engaged. I didn't have the privilege of going to HBCU undergrad, but I wish I would have.
same,
I
same.
would have. I think about my experience at a PWI, how it took me all the way up to my maybe third or fourth year to finally see an adjunct instructor at that was black. You're already in a field. Well, at the time, I was a nutrition dietetics major. So at the time, you're in a discipline that is driven, Caucasian driven. So to be able to finally see someone that looks like you that can, you know, resonate with the things that you're being faced with on this campus was just like an eye opener. So I think it's just really, I can't stress enough how important it is to get back involved. I'm even looking to see ways for me to get back involved through at Jackson State if there's some type of mentorship program that I can do or be a part of because it's so important. Mentorship leads to sponsorship initiatives.
Mm.
So I think that we got to start there first to get there. So
Yeah, yeah. And you made a good point because like I'm just as soon as you said the PWI thing and having
mhm.
instructors who look like you, it made me sit back and think like, wait a minute, right? Like I spent 4 years at the University of Maryland undergrad, and I'm trying to think of a time where I had a black instructor. And maybe I think I took African American art,
Yeah.
maybe.
Hmm.
Maybe my instructor was black. I can't quite remember. But every single professor that I had across the board were white and did not
Yeah.
look like me.
Yeah.
And thinking about how when I went to Howard for my master's, that was a completely different situation, right? And how it was a harder program for me, but simultaneously, I felt a lot more safe, a lot more sense of community. And that instantly thought made me think about how we need more Black people who
Hmm.
are educators and who want to educate our children, right?
Absolutely.
Like we need more of that because, and I'm not going to get into the details of the research today or right now, but the research is there to show us, right, that majority of our kids are not being educated by people who look like them.
Right.
And
Right.
what stories are we telling, right? When what sense of protection are we providing? We're leaving ourselves up for chance in too many ways, right? And I think that yes, teachers are underpaid,
Yeah.
they're under-resourced, you know,
Absolutely.
they're tired, they're exhausted, and so there is a level of passion that you have for the role and the job. But when we're talking about the importance of mentorship and the importance of seeing someone who look like you, we need to figure out how to get more Black educators on these campuses
Hmm.
and in primary education.
Definitely, definitely. And I was thinking about that during like homecoming, how we could capitalize on that time to bring in those individuals and have those, different panel discussions and networking tents. I just think that there would just be a prime time for students to be able to tap into all of that excellence that walk away with some type of internship, that they would walk away with knowing that that particular um, invention or idea that they had could actually be a reality because they met someone that is doing the same work. So I just think that we just have to kind of like, I know we have so much on our plate, but kind of like be a little bit more intentional about making use of that time during homecoming to really bring in and capitalize on that moment, because I believe that like we have people come out in droves, but make it educational, make it beneficial as well too. We can have fun, definitely. We don't want to discount the traditions of anything, but also give these students a glimpse of what success looks like and what their future could possibly look like by meeting those
Yeah.
sounds.
Do you think that um, that same concept can carry over into a PWI, right? And if so, how can you do that without being accused of excluding others, right? And so specifically what I'm talking about is at PWIs, right? We have minority populations, right? That typically struggle. Those are the ones that are struggling to make it through the 4 years. And if we're saying that one of the things we can do at HBCUs is bring back the people who have graduated to show the success stories, people who look like you, is there a way that that model can be translated into a PWI in a safe way so that people don't accuse you of excluding students who are not of color?
I can see it happening at a PWI. I can see it happening at a HBCU. But the difference between the two are the people that drive it. So again, HBCUs have they pride themselves on the fact of being a nurturing environment, of an environment like a family.
Mm-hmm.
You we could easily do that. At a PWI, um, I'm not sure how it would feel to a student of color. Would they feel that sense of connection or belonging if it's just tailored to one specific population, possibly? Here, if it's done at a HBCU, it's always been inclusive. It's always
Mm,
open. So I don't know if it would feel forced, but it is worth
mm.
trying and doing, because you want to give that opportunity to students. But the feeling and the connections may definitely they may be different.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Um, that's a good thing to think about too. And sometimes it's taking the model or the foundation of the model and making adjustments so that it works in a different environment. So that's something to consider. I want to talk to you a little bit more about your research interests, right? And I mean, you are working in your research, and I love that for you. I really,
Yes,
really
yes.
do. Which essentially looks at the importance of how we manage students of color, right? And so I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, specifically because this past week we've heard so much about future cuts to the Department of Ed, and I think it's good for us to have a conversation about like what that means for our most vulnerable students. So tell us a little bit first about your dissertation and your work there or your research interests.
Sure. So I did my study around students' perceptions of their parents' ability to support them and how it relates to retention. So
Mm,
I was curious to know kind of like why, what helps students stay in college, right? Where does that support come from? Um, Primarily, our support comes from our family, our parents. But not everyone receives that same level of support because not everyone has that same equal opportunity, whether you had a college degree or not, or, if you're working class. But how do you support your student in terms of being able to see them off to college and help them accomplish this goal? So I did a qualitative study on this, and the themes that resonated is that it's simple. Students do need support, whether it's from their parents in the form of, if it's emotional support, if it's financial support, they need it. And it was related to their ability to be able to persist, because they knew that, hey, my parents, they may not understand all of the curriculum, but they supported me by talking to someone in the community or talking to a family member to help me get therapy through a tough situation. That helped me persist. So those stories, I think, they really, really need to be heard. Their voices need to be amplified, because that's a way for us to be able to know what types of how we as an institution can work with our parents to better support and to help them see their role in the retention model. So it was a lot, but I'm glad that I took that path to learn
yeah.
insight about what types of struggles um, families of color are facing, to make the decision of, um, if we go without something in the household, we want to be able to support you because you're the first one to go to college, and we believe in you. And it just is a beautiful story of success and triumph. So I'm honored to be able to tell those stories and carry that research, and to also look further into what institutions can do to better support that first gen parent. Because again, if this is your first time sending a student off to college, you may not you definitely don't know how to support them, or what
Yeah.
to take place, or what these documents mean. So just being more intentional in terms of how we serve students and their families really could help the longevity of us being able to keep the student and graduate them ultimately.
Yeah. And essentially, what you're saying is that, or how important parental support is to students in overcoming the barriers and the challenges that are already set up for them, right? Like, there is no changing that right now in this moment. And I don't necessarily foresee it getting better over the next couple of years. I actually see it getting worse, right, over the next couple of years. And the significance of having your parents and your loved ones say to you, go
Yes.
out there, it's
Yeah.
gonna be hard, it's gonna kick your ass,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
However, here is a space for you to retreat to. Here is a space for you to come back to. Here is a space for you to cry in, right? And I think that if we didn't need it before, right? Or we need it minimally, or how much we need it before, we're gonna need that from parents, right? Even more
even
now.
even more, even more, to really to just to stay afloat, because there's so many changes that are happening in legislation in higher ed, period. You're going to need somebody. You need a support system. We all do,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
to be able to function in our day to day. So I can only imagine I had that support system, but I also acknowledge that many others may not. But
exactly.
it's, yeah, it's the institution's job to step in, to put our arms around students, to let them know, hey, this is what's available. We have this resource available for you. We want to help you. We want to see you succeed. It's pulling in our community partners and saying, hey, we have a pocket of students that typically do not succeed. Here is how you can help with moving that needle forward. Having those
Mm.
conversations, helping people see their role in student success and in retention will definitely be a game changer. So,
Yeah, let's actually talk about like we said, we wanted to touch on this whole Department of Ed thing.
mhm.
I assume that you already have a difficult time finding resources for your students, finding, significant amount of programs, help, all of the things to provide a good spot for your students to land. How do you think the incoming adjustments are going to impact your ability to do your job effectively, or how it's going to impact students? And so before you kind of give your feedback, I'll just give the audience a little bit of a, I guess, insight into what we're talking about. And so with the new administration, they're talking about their desires to cut the Department of Education, right? And I know that sometimes these things can feel very distant and foreign from us, but I want to provide people with some insight into how this is real and it is happening. So I saw the other day that American University is cutting their Department of Education, their School of Education. And primarily it's because they are currently in a $60 million deficit. And what happens is when first of all, I'm going to back up. Most universities are in a deficit, right? Like, let's just keep it a bean. Most universities are at a deficit because of COVID, because kids spent so much time at home, not necessarily on campus, investing back into the campus with their dollars, right? Because at the end of the day, college is a business, right? Let's just
It
be
is.
honest.
It is.
So, many universities are facing deficits. And so American University, I think it was their dean, sent out an email basically saying that they're cutting their Department of Education or their School of Ed due to the deficit, and likely because of the incoming adjustments with cutting the Department of Ed, the federal department, how those federal funds that we once used to get are going to indeed impact the actual work that the schools are able to do. So this email was sent out to all of their students in the School of Ed. And so now what that means is, and I don't know if they're going to grandfather anybody in, or what that, or how
Exactly.
that's going to work, but if people don't know, when programs are cut from universities, students could have done all of this work, all of these hours, done all of these things, and they will not be able to graduate with the degree that they've worked so hard for, right? So it is here, it is happening. How is that going to impact, or the future cuts, if they happen the way that we think that they're going to happen? How do you think that's going to impact your work that you are doing with these students, and how do you think it's going to impact student success overall?
Yes. So just to go back, again, the U.S. Department of Education, it's a federal government agency, and it oversees our education policies, funding. It is also like a repository of all of our data that we collect within our education systems. But it also promotes and ensures the achievement and preparation for giving students access to education, right? And equal. equal access, right? So you're talking about cutting something like that, then you're talking about eliminating grants and which students use to actually attend school. You're talking about cutting special education programs. How many of us in our families have exceptional uh, family members or students that we come across that fall under that category? Imagine cutting funding for them. We're talking about teacher preparation programs being cut, preparing our future educators. They may not be able to get what they need, the training that they need, if this department is eliminated. So it impacts my work greatly and deeply. I am very scared as to what things will look like, because if you eliminate a lot of that funding already for an institution that already doesn't have the same endowment or the same access to funds as a PWI does, it is really it's not looking great right now. So I believe that it will phase. I hate to say it, it may phase a couple of HBCUs out. They may not have the bandwidth to withstand on their own without this funding. It, this funding supports a lot of the work and a lot of the programs on our campuses in terms of student success. And if you take that away, I don't think a lot of our smaller private institutions or even our public institutions will be able to withstand that.
You are 100% correct, right? 100% correct. And if your statement doesn't do anything, I think it consistently stresses the importance of people connecting back to the institutions in which they've come from, right? Especially HBCUs. And this is why we have to have the conversation, because when there is significant changes like this,
Yeah,
individuals that are already barely hanging on are the
barely.
ones that typically sink and drown. And what we know about our HBCUs, which is it creates this cycle, right? Many of times it's difficult to promote HBCUs and send our kids to HBCUs because the funding is not there,
Exactly.
especially for our kids from that are coming from poor communities or underserved communities. And so their parents cannot pay for school. Their
No,
parents cannot get financial aid because they don't have the credit in order to do so. And so we're already talking about institutions where it's difficult, which is crazy to say out loud. It's already difficult to send our
to,
black kids to HBCUs in the first place.
absolutely.
And now we're talking about a system where we're going to send them to institutions that are already struggling. But
Mhm.
anytime something like this happens, it immediately impacts us the most, the ones that are already struggling. And so I agree with you. HBCUs don't have the endowment funds that they need, right? Which is why they can't give scholarships, which is why they cannot attract the best athletes to bring them more funding in dollars, right? Like we
Yeah,
talk about HBCUs, and we talk about, we make fun of sometimes, or we ridicule people for not going, but in a world where the HBCU is a protected space for us, you got to have the resources and the means in order to get to them. And let's also talk about how a lot of HBCUs are private institutions. So they're already not getting the funding from the federal government that they need.
right, right. So I can only imagine what this will do for college admissions, um, how that hit, what type of effect it would have on college admissions for HBCUs, after if this goes into effect. um, Students would already are hearing, in the media about it's not important to get a college education already. So if you bring into the mix that, hey, you're cutting the Department of Education, a lot of the students that are coming from K through 12, they relied heavily on a lot of those services to help them get through that K through 12 education. And then it's like, okay, you're going to take that away as well. So my dream of becoming a scientist may not come true because I don't have the support financially. or it's just so many different variables to take into consideration. It is also just flat out, a way to eliminate a certain population from advancing.
Yep.
That's what it boils down.
Yep. 100%, right? I
Yeah.
teach my students about like the concepts of the different types of racism and segregation that we faced over time, right? And before, when we have Jim Crow laws and we have all of these things that basically indicate like, no, we do not want you here, and no, we don't want you to advance, right? A lot of that was written in law. It's not anymore in many ways, but we do still face segregation and discrimination in very de facto ways, which essentially means like, yeah, the policy doesn't say, I don't want you to advance. But when we do things like this, right, inadvertently we impact students of
Intentionally.
colors, and
Yeah.
it's intentional, right? Like it's inadvertently impacting them, but it's done intentionally, right? And again, this goes back to your core point, which is this is why we have to self advocate. This is why we have to teach people help seeking behaviors, right? This is why we have to be vulnerable within our own communities to say, hey, there are things that we need to do to protect ourselves, because we are living in a time right now where the system, I mean, it's never really been designed to protect us,
Never.
right? But
Right.
let's be
Never.
very clear. But we're living in a time right now where the little bit of safety net that we once had is likely going to be ripped from under us.
Right. Right. And I worry about that for students. Historically, HBCUs have been a safe haven for not only students but for faculty as well, that were not able to teach in spaces due to their religious belief or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it has always been a safe haven. And just to imagine the fact that someone wants to deconstruct the whole concept is it's very heartbreaking, because we provide so much more than an education. We provide, you know, the love, the support, the family of things, and to have it ripped away because of the fear the fear of advancing is just crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah. I really hope for better days and for us to be able to figure it out. I think, wrapping up our conversation, we could literally talk all day. And I say this
Yeah,
to everybody that I talk to, like we could go all
yeah, we
day
can.
long.
We can. We can.
But I want to again just highlight some of the things that you've said here, which is just like how we create community, how we teach our students to self-advocate and to seek help, how we on our campuses can engage these students a little bit more, how alumni should be connecting back to their universities. Even if you went to a PWI, contact the Black student unions that were
That
there, right, to
is true.
assist with that. But we have to do a lot more in making sure that we are being protected.
That's right. Definitely, I agree with you. And again, it's not a one and done fixed type of thing. We can do it and break it up, but we have to do something, and we need to do
Yeah.
something right away. We are the walking embodiments of our ancestors, so we definitely have activism, advocacy. It's in our DNA. So we will continue to keep pushing forward. We will continue to give students access, and just be encouraged, most importantly. So,
I love it. Well, before we go, Dr. Marshall, tell us about outside of the job and the work. What tell us about the fly and the fun things that you're into right now.
listen, so it's that time of year. We're in the holiday season, so I love a good Nordstrom sale, a good
I
Zara
love it,
sale.
babe.
I enjoy spending time with my family. You know, I I'm new to Virginia. I've been here for 9 months, so I'm looking to make friends and meet new people. I love a good Sunday brunch. But I just enjoy interacting and exchanging stories with people. I find that to be the most fun part of life is just meeting and interacting with people. So,
I love it bad. I love it bad. Well, Dr. Marshall, I will let you go for today. It was such a pleasure to speak to you and to have this conversation with you.
yeah.
Continue to do the work that you do because we need you bad. These
Yes.
students need you bad, and we really do appreciate you.
No, thank you, Dr. Davis, for creating a platform for voices like this to be heard. I think this is really just a phenomenal thing that you're doing, and I know it's going to take off. So I'm excited to have been a part of this today.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.